Today, we're exploring the life and legacy of Gigi Gryce, the quiet revolutionary in jazz and musicians' advocacy. Gigi Gryce was a remarkable figure whose impact on jazz and musicians' rights remains relevant. Let's dive into his story. Gigi Gryce was born in Pensacola, Florida, in the 1925. A talented multi-instrumentalist, he studied at the Boston Conservatory, where he mastered both classical music and jazz. Gryce became a prominent figure in the 1950s hard bop jazz scene, collaborating with artists like Clifford Brown and Art Farmer. Despite his music talent, he stepped away from performing in the 1960s to focus on teaching. His career may have been short-lived, but his contributions left a lasting mark. Gryce's legacy is multifaceted. First, he was a musical innovator, shaping the sound of hard bop with compositions like Minority and Nicka's Tempo. His arrangements balanced bebop complexity with bluesy melodies, making them timeless. Second, he was a trailblazer for musicians' rights. Disillusioned by unfair practices in music publishing, Gryce founded the Melotone Music Publishing, helping artists retain rights to their compositions and earn fair royalties. Finally, Gryce was a dedicated educator, inspiring young musicians to pursue excellence and creativity. Gigi Gryce's publishing model was groundbreaking. Unlike traditional publishing practices for the time, which often stripped musicians of their rights and royalties, Gryce's Melotone Music allowed artists to retain control over their work. For example, traditional publishers claimed ownership of compositions while Gryce ensured composers kept their rights. His model emphasized transparency, fair royalties, and artistic freedom. His achievements, Gryce's contributions were often overshadowed by contemporaries like Art Blakey and Thelonious Monk. His fight for musician rights, while admirable, limited his commercial success. Recognition of his genius came mostly after his death in the 1983, as scholars and musicians revisited his work and advocacy efforts. Now, let's take a look at how interest in Gigi Gryce's work has evolved over the time. So on this graph, you see indicators such as the number of albums reissued, mentions in academic studies, and performances on his compositions across the decades. In the 1950s, during his active year, Gryce was well recognized in the jazz community with several recordings and collaboration. From the 1960s to the 1980s, following his retirement, there was a sharp decline in visibility as he shifted to teaching and stopped recording. In the 1990s, though, this period marked the rediscovery of his work through reissued albums and early scholarly writings like in Rat Race Blue, which highlighted his legacy. In the early 2000s, interest grew further, with more mentions in jazz education and greater accessibility to his music via digital platforms. Interestingly, from the 2010s to the 2020s, Gryce's compositions are performed regularly, and his advocacy efforts are celebrated, fueling a renewed appreciation among musicians and scholars alike. So when we're discussing Gigi Gryce's legacy, we cannot overlook Minority, one of his most famous compositions. It was composed in the 1953. Minority is a hard bop classic that showcases Gryce's brilliance as a composer. It features intricate harmonies and a lyrical, memorable melody, making it both technically challenging and deeply expressive. The song was first recorded by Clifford Brown and has since been covered by jazz legends like Miles Davis and Canobbe Adderley. Today, it is frequently performed and studied as a staple of the jazz repertoire. Minority exemplifies Gryce's ability to blend bebop complexity with accessibility, a hallmark of the hard bop era. Let's take a moment to appreciate this iconic piece throughout the snippet of recommended listening link or QR code that I provided. To conclude, Gigi Gryce's impact transcends his music. He wasn't just a composer or a performer. He was a visionary who sought to change the music industry for the better. As Noel Cohen, the co-author of Rat Race Blue, in the musical life of Gigi Gryce said, Gryce was not only a brilliant musician and composer, but also a trailblazer in advocating for musician rights. His work laid the groundwork for fair practices in the music publishing, and his compositions remain an essential part of the hard bop lexicon. Let's honor Gigi Gryce by continuing to explore and celebrate his work. Thank you for listening. My name is Wang, and this is my presentation on Gigi Gryce.